I'd like to welcome everybody to this presentation on how to help our children during difficult times. It's critically important to handle some of these situations correctly so we don't produce a lot of anxiety and stress in our kids. I'll be discussing some tips for parents, and I'll also be discussing things to watch out for, as well as what we watch out for in children with autism. Namaste. It's a blessing to have you here, and I appreciate your attention during this presentation. My name is Tom Brown. I am a licensed master's level psychologist. I've been doing this for 43 years. I currently work in a neurology practice. I'm a member of the PANDAS and PANS Physicians Referral Network. PANDAS is pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder related to streptococcal bacterial infections. We're finding that the streptococcal bacteria are passing the blood-brain barrier and causing neuropsychiatric complications in children. Also, I've been blessed to be able to travel to India, Bangladesh, South Africa, and Netherlands and states in the United States. I've spent an extensive amount of time in India, and through the blessings that I have received, I have been able to help and encounter hundreds of kids around the world and hundreds of kids with autism. I do this humbly and respectfully. It's not an ego thing, but it's a gift that opened a door, and I walked through it, and the Masters gives me the blessings to do this, and I greatly appreciate that. I'd like to give thanks to the Song of the Morning for sponsoring this virtual YogaFest, and hopefully next year we'll be able to go to the YogaFest on the grounds. It is just a supreme, joyous event for parents and kids. I'd like to introduce one of my mentors, who I've adapted a lot of things that I do. His name is John McGee, and he founded Gentle Teaching International, which goes by the philosophy of treating others in a very humane and loving manner. And John traveled the world, spent a lot of time in many decrepit institutions around the world. He also worked with the street children in Brazil, and he was a testament that one man can make a difference in the lives of thousands of people. John died in 2012. We greatly miss his enlightened presence. We ask him to send us some blessings to us. Gentle teaching is kind of a psychology of interdependence, where you feel safe, you feel loved, and feel engaged, and you can also reciprocate those feelings and be able to give that back. John was awarded the Knight of the Order of the Orange Nassau by Queen Beatrice of the Netherlands. He was also appointed to the Human Rights Commission on Mental Health. He was an enlightened being, and we miss him dearly. He dedicated his life to service to others, marginalized people in many decrepit places. These are very difficult times. This is probably the most difficult time that we will experience in our lifetime. My personal thought is that this is a time of purification for the whole planet and all the beings on it. And I also feel that when this process is done, that we will reach a state of enlightenment, and that we'll be closer to our Creator, and that we will feel a more compassion and empathy and understanding for others, as well as accepting others' customs, spiritual beliefs and practices, and that we realize that we are all connected by the Creator with love. Some of the topics we're going to be going over are listed here, but I'd like to alert you to the fact that after the presentation I will be answering questions and comments on the Friends of the Ranch Facebook page, and that you will need to register, join that before the question and answer period. This is a time of very rapid and dramatic changes, and It's a break in the normal routine from school and home. Parents and teachers have changed their roles, where parents are now teachers and teachers are online. And also athletic events and social events for children have been canceled. There's no loss of connections, and mom and dad are home 24/7. We don't really have too many holiday celebrations out in the streets anymore, and there's been a lot of turmoil. There's still unknown about this epidemic, and I would just urge people to be just cautious and sensible. This is just a very brief anatomy and neurophysiology about how anxiety affects us, and also how anxiety gets started, and things that we can do to slow this process down. This is the limbic system. The limbic system involves the hippocampus, the amygdala, and the hypothalamus. Hippocampus is thought to be our seat of our memory, amygdala, seat of our emotions. Hypothalamus regulates blood levels, salt, blood pressure, and one of the more important things is also hormones. Memories are stored in these areas. Sensory memories are also stored in these areas. And when we undergo acute stress, these functions of these can change fairly dramatically. So memories involve neuroanatomy, hormones, and our sensory system: smell, taste, touch, hearing, and movement. Hippocampus, our primary learning center. Amygdala is involved in many autonomic nervous system responses, and it's our seat of our emotions, and it incorporates sensory information into memory. So when sensory information enters into that emotional memory, then during times of acute stress, it can cause anger, fear, grief, and envy. Also within all this neuroanatomy and physiology is the pituitary gland that generally regulates growth, but it also regulates blood pressure. It's also a master gland for many other organs too. The pineal gland regulates female reproduction, but also regulates the circadian rhythm or our sleep cycles. It's in the Bible, it's talked about as the single eye of Christ, and many of us also consider it to be the third eye. There's crystals in the pineal gland that can emit colors of the prism. And, when vibrated at high frequencies, those colors can be emitted. Sometimes during meditation, we can get some very vivid colors. And, I think this is part of the process. So all these areas work together: chronic anxiety, stress, post-traumatic stress disorder, when they're activated. So it starts the adrenaline and blood pressure going. This is another graphic that gives us the hippocampus and amygdala, but what happens is that normally we're able to filter things out, and we can use our prefrontal cortex and our frontal lobes to say that things are safe or okay, that we've been here before, or that I can look at mom and dad's face and see things are good. But during repeated times of anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder, what will happen is this process here, the reasoning process, kind of shuts down. And the only process that kind of kicks in is the amygdala, hippocampus, and hypothalamus, which creates a chronic stress cycle. This graphic shows you a little bit of how the adrenaline and cortisol interactions work. So this system here is kicked into gear during times of repeated stress and anxiety, and it can become a default network that will send adrenaline throughout the body that regulates heart rate, respiration, dilation of pupils, and so this can become a chronic process. Some of the good news is we do have some very good treatments these days. People need to avail themselves of this, and it is a lot of work. But some people think that when you go through the treatment or therapy process that you have to relive these experiences. and that is not true. We have different ways of recovering from this now. This is a mega-analysis study that involved about 76 other studies that looked at all of that. So anxiety is characterized by prolonged preparedness for real or perceived threat. And one of the things they found that chronic cycling in this loop causes chronic inflammation, and they could measure that via the cytokines and the C-reactive proteins. And it was also very prominent in children, because they did examine children in some of this too, and that same cycle did work in kids, unfortunately. This is a picture I took during the March 7th, 2019 Mahasamadhi for Yogananda up at the Yoga Ranch. I noticed that on any of these memorial events that there was some other cosmic things that kind of happen. Yogananda died in 1952. Excuse me. So this is how we store our memories and how we learn a lot of stuff. This is our child's autobiography, or the self-narrative, and it's infused with emotional and sensory information about the event too. So the autobiographical memory becomes the self-narrative. It integrates memories from past social experiences with current, encodes information in both emotions and sensory and cognitive areas. And the process starts between ages 2 to 3, and it also helps with the development of short-term memory, such as, I'm thinking about something. And this is where we develop concepts and principles in our relationship about the world. Also very interesting, this is where we develop mental time travel, where we can go forward, or think we can go forward, or we can reflect on the past and how it's worked with the present. This is a picture I took last YogaFest of kids' bicycles lined up outside the Forest Village at Solomon morning. Children with autism cannot fully develop an autobiographical memory. And what happens is that they are more engaged with rote memory. It's just facts and figures that are memorized over and over again. And their world then becomes a world of black and white, and where abstraction is difficult. And these kids are also, and adults are also rule bound and schedule bound. So they find security in the sameness of the world. So this is especially true now, when their worlds are turned upside down. It can be very, very chaotic and tumultuous. Children with autism cannot fully develop a life's narrative. Their strength lies in rote memory and the repetition of these facts. The disruption of the routine can be cataclysmic. It's through the predictable routine that they obtain comfort. It's difficult for them to reference a parent's face to see if they're safe. And these parents, they truly need help from all of us, because it's incredibly stressful. This is a series of old pictures I took in Dharamsala, India, at the Tibetan Cultural Center. Just a beautiful place to visit. And Tibetans are funny, engaged people, polite. One of the things that's very important too is parents need to understand that they do not need to pass their emotional triggers on to their children. Check yourself. Take a breath. After 3 generations, and I've seen this, where post-traumatic stress disorder, with the repeated families and events, can become a recessive trait. So we really need to work together. Parents need to be able to switch in and out and to help each other. Parents who are separated, as best as you can, try to bury things and get along with your kids and try to help them out. This is one of my favorite Yogananda quotes. Forget the past, for it is gone from your domain. Forget the future, for it is beyond your reach. Control the present lives supremely well now. This is the way of the wise. Sometimes it doesn't kick in at the right moment, and I reflect on it later and regret it. This is a picture that was taken during the Christmas meditations in 2018. Specifically, this is a 5-hour meditation for Jesus. So even in difficult times, we can still get blessings, both big and small, and they're all around us. And we have to be aware of that. Here's some things to look for. Physical symptoms in children can include headaches, stomach aches, fragmented sleep, change in bowel habits, sweating, which is endocrine system response, rapid heart rate, adrenaline, shortness of breath is the adrenaline. Remember that adrenaline cortisol loop. It can become chronic. We need to break that apart. Emotional symptoms can include kids being very sensitive, frequently being angry or grouchy, separation anxiety or clinging appearance, and I would imagine right now being overly concerned about germs and worrying. Kids can worry a lot, just like adults. And sometimes they don't eat properly, become restless, and they can also have a great deal of difficulty with concentration and focus. Signs of anxiety in kids can include nightmares or parasomnias. Parasomnias are night terrors as well as sleepwalking. They can experience regression in, say, thumb sucking and toileting. Don't ridicule or punish these things if you see them. Panic attacks. Kids can have panic attacks, shaking and trembling, meltdowns or temper tantrums. Signs of stress in kids with autism can include incredible high levels of agitation, just can't settle down, and jumpy and running. It can also include aggression towards others as well as themselves, or rigid, where they get extremely fixed in something that will distract them from what's going on, or they start to obsess about the same thing over and over. Sleep can get worse, and they may engage in some repetitive statements. So one of the things I like to do is when I encounter many difficult situations from acute psychiatric patients in state hospitals to little kids, is I speak very softly. When you speak softly, you get somebody's attention versus yelling at them. And I don't carry a big stick. And remember that loud voices and yelling is an alert to your entire system. And when that happens, it starts that adrenaline and flight and fight mode. And so it's best not to try to go there. In teens, you can see some mood swings. Their endocrine system just kicking in. Hormones, their body has changed. And it's a new body to them also. Sleep disorder, remember the pineal gland, plus the endocrine system. Panic attacks, they can also have arrhythmia or rapid heart rate, palpitations. Some symptoms are same just as other kids, but they can also have depression, lack of interest. Anger is usually directed towards the parent, as in it's like your fault, or it's happening because you did something wrong. Girls can have difficulty with menses, and that's also endocrine. Eating disorders can arise, as well as they may have a tendency to kind of neglect their responsibilities. But what I'd like to really emphasize is that we can help with all this stuff. Panic attacks, PTSD, that chronic stress cycle. And flat out, we can do this, but you have to avail yourself and you have to invest yourself in a treatment. And treatment is sometimes it can be a process that people don't want to engage in, but is it better to feel this way the rest of your life and try to pass this stuff on to your children? No, it's not. And you don't have to relive the experiences that you go through, because we have different methods to treat this. Drugs are not usually the answer for post-traumatic stress disorder, because psychiatric drugs generally have an effective rate of about 30%, which is a placebo. And some of the medications were used for post-traumatic stress disorder were touted in many psychiatric journals, but they only had a effective rate of 8% when the VA did a longitudinal study on this. So let's try to change things so we can make things good for our kids. Worry, it's like battery acid. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to limit worry to 5 minutes. I've had a number of stressful events in the last 4 years. We lost our oldest daughter 4 years ago. Then 11 months after that, my wife died. 6 months after that, my mom. And 8 months after that, my dad. And it took me a couple of years to actually do this. But we always have a tendency to go to the worst possible outcome, and I was able to stop that and then just not worry so much. But I recently just blew right on through that. I got in touch with some of the pain from my wife's death, and it cost me a very dear relationship. And I asked forgiveness on that and blessings from above so that may heal. One of the things we also have to do is we have to forgive yourself. Everybody else has. And those people that don't forgive you and hold the grudges, don't hang around with them. That's not a good place for you. So we have to let go of guilt. It doesn't do any good. Let go of grudges. We don't need those either. And parents, when we're working with our kids, just like we did in the psychiatric hospitals, we work as a team and we trade off when people get exhausted. So parents need to trade off. They need to monitor each other, help each other get a break. Now we can go outside, hug a tree. Nature therapy is a big help. Parents that are separated, wouldn't this be like a really good time to get together and work it out? No more of the lovey-dovey stuff or the anger or I told you this or whatever. Just drop it. And one of the really cool things is teaching your family and your kids how to meditate together. Here's some information about sleep. It's key to memory consolidation, cognitive and behavioral and physical functioning. Insufficient sleep results in daytime fatigue, poor health, and weakens the immune system. Very interesting too, I've seen this. Sleep disturbance in children can look a lot like attention issues, such as attention deficit disorder. And I've had many referrals where schools thought the kids were hyperactive and were on medication, but wasn't sleeping enough. Schedules were erratic in the family. There was no routine. Sleep disturbance can cause the parasomnias, which is night terrors and sleepwalking. In teens, they will internalize these problems and it can create depression and irritability. And also, as adults, the teens, what can happen is they trip into adulthood and contributes to anxiety and depression in adults. Our first line of defense is establish a consistent schedule and routine so that the kids kind of fall into that pattern for bedtime and prayer and family time. At age 6 years to 3 months, when we try to put kids to sleep, they can engage in crying in the crib or their bed. And I would encourage parents to realize that it's okay for kids to cry. I once had a couple come in with their 9-month-old son, and they said that he gets up every hour on the hour, and he couldn't get any sleep. And what was happening is he would cry. They would go in, comfort him, rock him, and love him, put him back down, and he'd relax for a while. But then he started into the "I want mommy and daddy," even though he couldn't talk. And he had actually conditioned them to get up every hour. So I told him, I said, you've got to let the kid cry. It's okay. Other kids, some of the kids who can speak and understand stuff, just little simple statements such as, I love you, it's bedtime. When kids experience fears at night, we help them with self-talk about everything's okay. You may have thought that somebody's in the room or something was there, but we looked and there wasn't. And sometimes, things at night, it can make us a little anxious, but you're very safe and loved. Curtain calls, where kids will, go to bed and they'll come out, I want some water, go to bed, and, I want some juice. And so with the curtain calls, again, it's just calmly, I love you, it's time to go to sleep. Teens can trip into what's called a sleep-wake phase cycle that creates insomnia. And we also have some effective treatments for that too. Critical items also include good nutrition, complex carbohydrates and protein, eliminate sugars for sure, and water, sugary drinks, get rid of those. My first job was working in a child guidance clinic in Port Huron, and I remember distinctly that it was like a day or two after Halloween, and that the waiting room was lit. Those kids were on a sugar high. It was like uncontrollable. Establish the same routine, but we also want to include some things that are different. So you don't want to make the routine rigid, where we create a situation of same but different. We're adding little changes in that help kids adapt to those changes. Limit screen time. One of the blessings at YogaFest is I saw these kids just riding bicycles and playing. There were no tablets, there were no phones, nobody was angry, nobody was in tears, nobody had fights, they got along. It was sweet. Help your children to express themselves through art and music. Take an interest in their emotions and don't be defensive in what they may say. It's important to keep in touch with others via Zoom or FaceTime. Social connections are incredibly important for our development of our cortex, and play is very important too. Do not yell when things get roly-poly, but try to speak very softly. In numerous situations in psychiatric hospitals, I've lowered my voice almost down to a whisper, and it helps to get somebody's attention and helps to calm them down. Being very careful with your words. I don't use ridicule, and I don't try to tell people they're worthless or blame them. Never use punishment because that will backfire. Yelling, as I said before, alerts the nervous system. Work on joint projects with the kids. Ask for their help and their input. Let them know that they're safe and loved, and give frequent hugs. Also let them know that, yes, things are different, but we will be okay. It's going to take some time. And wouldn't it be nice to teach some of those bendy, stretchy yoga things to kids too, to help them relieve their stress? These are a no-no. Punishment. Don't take things away. It just teaches kids that things are temporary. Do not use intimidation. Never try to make another person feel guilty. Physical punishment only teaches violence. Do not make statements like, "You're just like your mother." Don't dredge up past grievances, because they're gone. Teach meaningful life lessons. My daughter, Melissa, I read to her well into 12 years old, until she was 12 or 13, I believe. And at times I would also try to teach meaningful life lessons by telling little stories about what I saw was going on, some things that had happened to me that might have been a similar situation. And it's okay to use brief timeouts, and always use praise and love. That works absolutely the best. You don't want to destroy your child's self-confidence with punishment. Children with autism, again, establish a routine that is the same but includes some differences in it so they don't become stuck in that rigid routine. Understand that meltdowns can be due to a sensory overload, communication difficulties, and them not feeling safe, engaged, and loved. As adults, we have to consciously remember that our sentences are way too long, so you have to become shorter, lower your voice, and become quiet, and go slower. I would also develop this where I had one particular kid in Calcutta. It must have been 100 degrees out, and he was having a very difficult time, so I would pat him in front of me and rock him back and forth. And I was just singing a little song, "Bitsy bitsy spider goes up the water spout." But it's those kind of rhythmic, gentle little things that help Savant calm. Do not ask for eye contact. I have no idea why we keep teaching this, because I've talked to many children and adults with autism, and it's neurologically painful for them to look in your eyes and stare into them for long, lengthy periods of time, and they never get any information out of it. Vestibular stimulation can help too with common kids with autism, such as swings and sky chairs. Also, proprioceptive stimulation, which is the senses in our skin and just the touch areas of our skin. And that can include muscle squeezes, light or firm pressure. And also use pictures to explain what's coming up or how the schedule is going to be for the day. One, Carol Gray in Grand Rapids is creating a very nice program for social stories. And again, these parents need our help, because this is a very difficult battle for them that leaves them exhausted. This is just a little, this is a picture of another, I think it's a Mahasamadhi event from 2 years ago at the Song of the Morning, where the sky was just electric during the services for Yogananda and Sri Yaktashar and Christ. This is one of my favorite people I like to read, by Roy Eugene Davis. My mind was clouded, you illuminated it. My awareness was fragmented, you restored it. My being was troubled, you redeemed it. Then I saw that there was no difference between you and my true self. Roy Eugene Davis was a direct disciple of Yogananda. Social stories help kids establish an autobiography. And social stories supports learning in a safe and meaningful area. It was used primarily for children with autism, but it also works very well with kids ages 4 to 8. Carol Gray is from Grand Rapids, and a very good program that's been around now, June, I think about 20 years. So take a look at that. I think it's a reference that will help kids, help parents. We're all social animals. We need socialization. In fact, for the brain to fully develop and mature, kids need social interaction. And during extended periods of isolation, the cortex, what will happen is that it will start to prune synapses and connections because they're no longer needed. That pathway has become dormant. And so that can extend some of the neurological complications with profound isolation. Play skills are very important for kids. That's where they learn regulation, sharing of ideas, referencing each other non-verbally as well as verbally. And play is probably one of the most important functions that kids can engage in constructively. Teens also require meaningful social contact, critical time in their development too. I'd like you to consider establishing a family spiritual practice. So as evening evolves, set a time to establish a time to kind of sit down and unwind. Read some spiritual stories that are positive and meaning together. Feel free to answer questions about God, and life, and death, and hope. Also create a special place in your home, an altar, a little corner will do too. These are references for some videos. This is video just for kids on sleeping time to help them sleep. This is a video on meditation for kids also. This is one of my favorites. It's mindfulness for teens, and it includes Jennifer Hansen and LeBron James in it, and Anderson Cooper, and it shows the kids in classrooms meditating together, and talks about what those kids experienced. Very, very good tool. Meditation. There's over 5,000 articles about the health benefits of meditation to the body, immune system, emotions. So, and it's free. You don't have to go out and pay, $30 at the pharmacy to pick something up, and you don't have to go anywhere. It's right in your noodle. Isn't this so sweet? Family meditating together. This kid, I was what, 4, maybe 5 at the most, 3, and he's meditating. And this beautiful young girl getting into that meditation zone that provides so much relief and takes the world and what makes it wash away. This is my contact information. Tom Brown, P.O. Box 415, Atlanta, Michigan, 49709. Cell phone, and my email is tbrown8436 at Yahoo. This is a picture of my fire truck I got last year. It's a 1948 International with 4,400 miles on it, original seat covers, etc. And please remember that I will be answering questions and comments after the presentation, time yet to be determined, on the Friends of the Ranch Facebook page. It has been my profound pleasure to give this information to you. I wish you blessings from above. I wish everybody healing, peace, and calm.